Okay.
Hi, Pam.
Welcome to Restorative Yoga Training. We are super excited to be here. I'm Dawn Hopkins, for those of you who don't know me yet. I'm a 500-hour ERYT, which means I'm a master level instructor who can train master level instructors. And so I'm super excited to be able to share some of my expertise with you to help you understand how to really integrate and teach restorative yoga, really understanding all of the benefits of the practice and how you can really reach into some special populations and for therapy purposes work with clients as well. So we'll get into that in just a little bit. I'd love for you guys to just take a moment to introduce yourself. So just really quick, who you are, what training you have, and where you live. So I'm going to call on people just because I think it'll be more efficient. So Marty E.
Marty Elliott. I am a 200-hour certified yoga instructor that I just completed in June. And I live in Tempe, Arizona, and I work in Salt Lake City.
All right. Thanks, Marty. Wynn?
I'm also a 200 instructor. I teach yoga in a kind of a spiritual holy yoga class in my church in Trinity United Church in Winnipeg, Canada.
So just to clarify, you're not affiliated with Holy Yoga, the corporation, but you teach Christ-centered yoga, correct?
No, I'm not. I began doing this a number of years ago, just before I even knew there was such a thing.
Okay, awesome. That's great. Thank you, Wynn. Happy to have you here. Kathy.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kathy Richmond. I got my 200-hour teaching from Shirley in 2015. And then since then I've also, it's Christ-centered yoga, teaching under that stream. Since then I've also been certified to teach chair yoga with Holy Yoga. And I'm looking forward to taking this course. I teach in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, in Canada.
Awesome. So do you take Shirley's classes?
I did. Yeah, she was one who taught me she was one who I got my teacher training from her.
Awesome. All right, thanks. Good to have you here.
Good to be here.
Cheryl, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Cheryl Davis. I'm in the Orlando, Florida area. I finished my 200-hour yoga teacher training in June, and I've just yet to do my final project, and then I'll be up and running.
And I'm going to be knocking on your door, just to let you know.
Wait, is she the Cheryl Davis that
Yes.
purchases Arbonne?
Yes, she is. So here's Denise, your Arbonne rep right here.
Denise, hi!
Awesome. I know. She's like, wait, is that the same Cheryl Davis? All right.
I have my fingers in all of you guys.
Right? I see Samantha out there.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm Samantha, and I am a 200-hour certified instructor through Dawn, and my mom is Shirley. So
Nice.
yeah, so I trained with her. I'm currently in Leanne Parsons' basement in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, but I am from Fort McMurray, Alberta, Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Tell Leanne I said hi. It is so good to see your face again. It's been too long.
Yeah.
All right. I see a Samsung something. I don't know who that is. I don't have a name.
That's me, Dawn. That's
Oh, okay.
Cheryl.
Gotcha. Okay, so that's your sound. Shirley, I think everybody here knows you. Do you want to just do a quick introduction?
Sure. My name is Shirley Berthollet, and I'm in the big city of Esterhazy, Saskatchewan, population 2,500 people. And I'm a 200-hour ERYT, and I work with Dawn to facilitate the teacher training up here in Canada. And yeah, and I don't know what else I do, but that's mostly what I do right now. And Samantha's my daughter.
And she's a mother of 6, so that tells you
Oh, yeah.
how old she is.
Samantha's the oldest of the 6.
Okay, I'm going to just turn it over to the girls who are here local. We'll start with Marty.
Oh, okay. So I'm looking for a pen. changed courses last week and didn't do anything with me. So I'm Marty Schwartzstein. I also just finished my 200-hour teacher training certificate in June, and I've been really looking forward to this restorative and care as well. So that's
Awesome. All right. Denise.
Hi, I'm Denise Farmer, and I took Dawn's 200-hour yoga teacher training class, I think about a year and a half ago, and have been wanting chair and restorative for a while now. So I am here to do that, and then hopefully move forward and put fire under my tuchus and do something with it.
And she knows that I will be knocking on her door as well. Okay. So over here we have Jan.
Hi, Jan.
Hi, Cheryl. I just finished a 200-hour training with Cheryl and a bunch of the other ladies here in June. And I was inspired by Dawn's Christ Center classes at Joyful. I listened to him, but I like all of it. And I think that this restorative training, and maybe later on the chair, is really going to be my forte when I teach restorative and gentle yoga.
All right. And then we have Colleen.
Hi, Colleen.
Hello. I took the 200-hour class with Dawn in the spring as well. And I am really interested in the therapy part of the yoga.
All right. So I'm going to spin us back around. I'm coming back to my seat here. And I'm going to go ahead and get started. Let me see if I can make this so you can kind of see what I'm doing. I'll push it back in a little bit. Hang on one second. I'm going to start the recording on the laptop. This thing. Okay. Just want to make sure that we were recording because I think this recording won't be of the best quality. So we are going to take a look at restorative yoga. You guys should all have the restorative yoga notes that I sent via email. And then in addition to that, hopefully you have Relax and Renew by Judith Lassiter. We're going to be using this today. And then this is just an additional resource you might want to have, Restorative Yoga for Life by Yoga Journal. It's another great resource. You know, it's always good to have multiple books. I'm a collector of books, so this one I like as well. But we are going to be using the Judith Lassiter book for our training for the next 2 weeks. So I want to spend a little time just doing an introduction to what restorative yoga is and what it's all about. Hang on one second. I'm just making sure that the video camera is recording. Hold on. Doesn't look like that.
What was the name of the other book she recommended? I was grabbing a paper.
I'm not seeing usually there's a light, but it's not giving me a light, so I don't know.
The second book was Restorative Yoga for Life.
Different edition. Yeah.
It's still okay though?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if the page numbers will line up, so we'll see.
Okay.
Okay. I'm sorry, was there a question?
I just wondered, I missed the name of the book. I was off looking for a pen.
The first or the second one?
Second one.
The second one is called Restorative Yoga for Life.
Okay.
And it's by Yoga Journal. It should be in the email that I sent you.
Okay, yeah, got
So,
that.
yeah, hopefully you have that.
Yeah.
Okay, if not, I can always resend that. So restorative yoga is really just that. It's restorative in nature. It's a gentle, still, and very quiet practice that involves centering your breath and centering your body in order to facilitate a relaxation response from the body. It really helps to promote that stillness, that quiet, that rest and restoration that our body so desperately needs. And I'll get into the reason why we need that so badly in just a moment. But the props are there to support us comfortably in the poses. So it's different from yin. If you've ever taken a yin class, you're definitely in deeper postures, and the props are there to kind of hold you alongside your edge and to really allow the muscles to relax so that you can get into the ligaments and the tendons and the deeper connective tissues of the body. That's different than restorative. Restorative is a slow, gradual progression of opening that takes place in a comfortable fashion. And the props are designed to make you as comfortable as you can be while you're opening the body. Okay, so we will talk a little bit more about that in just a little bit, but we really have to understand why we need restorative yoga so badly before we get into the details and the practice. So stress is the reason, okay? So here's the thing. Stress is something that we all have to deal with on a daily basis, on a regular basis. It's a part of our daily life. Whenever we sense danger, the body will go into a fight or flight response. And so what happens in the body is that your systems of your body will align to deal with whatever that threat may be. So, for example, somebody slams on their brakes in front of you and you're about to crash into the car in front of you, right? Your body is designed to react quickly to that threat in order to protect you, to keep you safe. So that's when you slam on those brakes and hopefully you don't tap into the car in front of you. And then afterward, you'll notice your body is shaking, right? So that is the fight or flight response in the body. And the shaking comes from the chemicals that accrue in the body, things like cortisol, adrenaline, epinephrine, that help you to perform quickly, to deal with that fight or flight response, and in order to overcome whatever that challenge is, hopefully successfully, right? But then afterward, our body is shaking because our psoas muscle is shaking. That's one of the largest muscles of the body. It connects from the top of your thigh bone or the top of your femur, wraps through the pelvis, and then connects behind the diaphragm to 4 vertebrae of our thoracic spine. And so that muscle is hardwired into our fight or flight system. Its job is to keep us alive, to keep us safe. Every single animal in nature has this mechanism hardwired into it. It bypasses the frontal lobe. It connects to the rudimentary brain in the back of your skull. And so what happens is it's shaking to release that trauma, that stress from the body. And at the same time, it kind of flushes all of those chemicals out of the body as well. If we don't have an opportunity to remedy that, to release that stress or have opportunities for rest, those chemicals accumulate in our body and they have a negative effect on all of the systems of our body. So we end up with all kinds of stress-related ailments and complaints, okay? We're going to talk about that in a little bit, but I want to talk a little bit about the difference between acute stressors and chronic stress, okay? So our stress response, like I said, not only is there to help us with perceived danger, to help us rise to the occasion when needed, but it also deals with performance. So if you're ever having to take an exam, for example, Samantha, I know that you had to probably take an exam when you did your chef training. All of us have been there, maybe way back when we were in high school, college, whatever, where we've had to take an exam, but it helps the body to rise to the occasion with whatever the demands are that are placed on us. So it's not inherently a bad thing, right? Our body is there to respond accordingly to the demands placed on it. It's just when we have long-term periods of stress without times for recovery that we end up having that stress accumulate and the effects of stress accumulate in our body and then have a negative impact on the systems of our body. So we know that 75 to 90% of all visits to medical practitioners are due to stress-related ailments and complaints. OSHA has actually determined stress to be a hazard of the workplace. 43% of all adults suffer from adverse effects of stress. Okay, so adverse health effects due to stress. And it comes in all different shapes and sizes. As I mentioned earlier, we have a difference between the acute stressors and those chronic stressors. Acute stress is the most common. It's those demands and pressures that are placed on us on a regular basis. The problem is that we can still end up with the effects of long-term stress when those things accumulate time after time after time. So when we have, for example, acute stressors occur frequently and regularly, okay, now we're starting to end up in the area of chronic stress, okay? We're meant to ride out those stressors. So we respond to the stress, the body rises to the occasion, then it falls off, all the chemicals dissipate from the body restores itself, it comes back to homeostasis, and then it's ready for the next time that we have to deal with a stressor. What if we don't have time in between to rest? What if we don't have time in between to restore? What if we don't have time in between to heal from an injury, for example, which is also another acute stressor in the body? Okay, so some of you guys might be able to connect with this. I certainly have had my own bouts of long-term stress in my life, and I know that the impacts are profound, and they've happened to me in my lifetime. So when we think about chronic stress, this is the type of stress that over time will result in adverse health effects, things like anxiety, depression, eating disorders, insomnia, chronic muscle pain and tightness, neurological disorders, things like digestive disorders, immune disorders, autoimmune disorders. Okay, so things like this will accumulate over time, and we end up also with that weakened immune system, so we're going to be more prone to infection and disease and such. Okay, so we know that the Stress in America survey has shared some information that I want to share with you. It says, since 2007, the Stress in America survey has examined how stress affects the health and well-being of adults living in the United States. I need glasses. In 2015, reported overall stress levels increased slightly, with greater percentages of adults reporting extreme levels of stress than in 2014. Overall, adults report that stress has a negative impact on their mental and physical health. A sizable proportion do not feel they are doing enough to manage their stress. As for sources of their stress, adults are more likely to find family responsibilities stressful than they have in the past. Since 2007, the survey has found that money and work are the top two sources of very or somewhat significant stress, 67% and 65% in 2015, respectively. This year, for the first time, the survey reveals that family responsibilities are the third most common stressor, 54%, followed by personal health concerns, 51%, health problems affecting the family, 50%, and the economy, 50%. Over time, younger generations and women have consistently struggled with stress. These populations have reported higher average stress levels and have been more likely than their counterparts to say that their stress has increased in the last year. Adults with disabilities and adults who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender also report higher average stress levels and are more likely than their counterparts to say that stress has increased in the last year. And there's a reference of where I got the information. So I want you guys to look at average stress levels by generation. I just went to my kids' school this week to teach stress management techniques and tools because we're seeing a major rise in stress reporting by generation. This generation, the millennial generation, is reporting a higher stress level than any other generations previously. If you look at the chart that I gave you, you'll see every year it has gone up steadily from, you know, the matures to the boomers to the Xers to the millennials. Okay, but here's the crazy thing about this. They're reporting an average stress level of 6 on a scale of 1 to 10, but they're drastically under-reporting because stress has become so normalized in our society that they're not even reporting stress as stress. Okay, so they're actually saying that these are closer to an 8 than a 6 if you accurately reported what their stress levels are. Okay, so that's how crazy it's become. We have normalized stress to the point that people don't even recognize it anymore. It's just become a way of life, right? So there's our need for practices like restorative yoga. Okay, we need an opportunity for the body to rest, to restore, to heal, for the body to be able to bounce back from the effects that stress has upon our bodies and upon our minds and our hearts and our spirits, right? So would any of you guys say that you've experienced high levels of stress in the last few years?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. Family related. Okay. She's got a couple little kids, so we understand, right? I've got a couple older kids, and I can still say that that's true. So, but things like a major health concern, aging parents, a death in the family, you know, having to move, a loss of a job, you know, all of these things are major life stressors. I will send to you guys a survey following our call tonight that you can take that helps you identify like where you fall in terms of your stress levels and what your risk for a health event is. Okay, so you can take a look at that, and it's not something to make you fearful. It's just information, right, to show us how important it is that we make self-care a priority and that we have some sort of counter, a balance to the stress that we have in our lives, right? An opportunity to rest and to restore and to heal, like I mentioned previously. So beyond the fact that restorative yoga is a practice that is accessible to anyone and everyone, especially older generations, people who have limited mobility, people who can't, you know, really get on and off the floor. Once they get to the floor, they're okay, right? They can stay there because they're supported by the floor. But beyond that, it's really a necessity for us to counter our yang style life. And what I mean by that, we have yin and yang. Yang is that heat building, intense, the things that challenge us. They challenge our musculature. They are, you know, the things that are going to be more physical in nature, more physically demanding. But even our lifestyle can be yang-like, right? Where we're busy and we're hectic and we're overscheduled and we're stressed out, okay? Yin is that complement. It's that balance. It's the cool practice. It's the soft side of the practice. It's the opportunity for us to relax, to restore, to balance out all the stressors and the demands that we have in our lives. Okay? Have I built a case for the need? Yeah? Okay. So to give you a little, I'm not going to go too much into all of the history. You guys have the notes. You can read through them because I do want to spend time tonight and then in our next session really learning and understanding each of the poses that are a part of our restorative practice. But I do want to touch on a few things. So we know that the word yoga comes from the word yuj, which means to yoke or unite, to bind together, to bring something together as a whole. So it's really about the joining of the heart, the mind, the body, and the spirit as one. And then our spiritual practice is just that. It's whatever is unique to the individual. So whatever your spiritual path, that's that spiritual component, your connection to God, the divine, something bigger than yourself, however you connect, okay? The exact origins of yoga are unknown because they actually predate written history. So whatever you've heard about yoga and its origins, they don't know where it began. I mean, they don't know the exact date that it began because it predates written history. They actually found stone carvings in the Indus Valley depicting people in yoga poses that were discovered by archaeologists dating back more than 4,000 years ago. So according to the Complete Guide to Yin Yoga by Bernie Clark, a seal was discovered during the excavation of, I can't pronounce that, Mohenjo-Daro, an ancient city that flourished over 4,000 years ago. It depicted a yogi in a seated meditative posture. Okay, so as a systematized and formal practice, it really arose in the conjunction of the Yoga Sutras that were put together by Patanjali more than 2,000 years ago. Okay, so that's when it became systemized and formalized, and it was written down. So Hatha Yoga emerged as a tradition distinct from Patanjali's Yoga Sutras around the first millennium. And that really focused on the physical practice of yoga. So the sutras dealt more with the mind. The word asana is actually only mentioned one time in the Yoga Sutras, okay? So we know that we have those limbs of yoga that we progress through, and it really is about achieving bliss, but about mastery over the mind. Well, Hatha Yoga arose separate from that, and that was really more the concentration on the physical side of yoga and expanding into the physical practice, where it was about aligning the postures with the breath and meditation and kind of bringing it all together as one style of practice. So, so originally, the practice of asana, which originally was that seated pose, the very first pose, was all about having the strength of body so that we could be comfortable for long periods of time in order to practice the higher practices of yoga, like meditation, and ultimately to reach that state of samadhi or bliss. So in the West, we see a big deviation from the origins of yoga. We see that practice has become more physical in nature. It's really pulled away from its original roots. And that's where we start to see things like gym yoga, where we're really not focusing on the meditational aspects or the spiritual component of yoga. It becomes more of a physical form of fitness more than anything in those particular styles of practice. So there has been a resurgence in recent years, and I would argue because of the need for it, there's been a resurgence of yin and restorative yoga. Okay, so yay for us, because that gives us an opportunity to really share this practice with people who now are starting to become more familiar with it and who are interested in either complementing their Hatha style practice or their Yang style practice, or for people who are just really needing the benefits that we can gain from a restorative style practice. So restorative practice, if you think in terms of developing your yoga classes in terms of your sequencing, it's really going to be the stuff that's at the beginning and the end, okay? So like the meditation, the warm-up, the cool down, and the final meditation. Those things are going to comprise the bulk of your restorative practice, okay? BKS Iyengar wrote Light on Yoga. He's credited with the development of restorative yoga. He's been teaching yoga for over 75 years, and he's written many books. After seeing the negative impacts of that Hatha style practice on the body, he developed a series of restorative poses, using props to assist students so that they could practice without strain. Okay, giving the body an opportunity to relax and open up without any strain on the body. So he made it virtually accessible to anyone and everyone, which opened up the practice for people who, you know, you'll hear people who say, oh yeah, I can't do yoga, I'm not flexible, or I can't do yoga because I'm not strong enough, or I can't do yoga because I can't get on and off of the floor. So what this did is it opened it up to pretty much anyone who's willing, you know, to participate in the practice, because we can make it available to most people. And believe it or not, restorative practices, I'm a yoga therapist, and we can even do restorative yoga practice with people who are in a wheelchair. So like I said, it's available to anyone. So Judith Lassiter uses the term active relaxation techniques. And it's interesting, right? Because it seems kind of counterintuitive. You're going to be reading in this book, if you haven't already started, and you'll see that terminology, active relaxation, okay? Why do you think our relaxation has to be active?
To receive benefits.
Yeah, but why active?
Because we don't do it.
Because we don't do it.
Being inactive.
Yeah, Jan said because we don't do it. And that's the reality of it. It's very, very difficult for us, especially in the Western world. It's very difficult for us to relax on our own, right? We have to make it intentional. We have to actually be active and intentional about this practice of relaxation. Crazy as it may seem, right? It should be easy, but it's not for us. And so we have to learn techniques that deliberately and intentionally help us to relax and restore the body. Okay? So that will give us many different benefits. And so some of the benefits of restorative yoga, it fosters deep rest and relaxation in the body, calms the mind, improves sleep, lowers stress levels, and improves mood by elevating our happy hormones, our endorphins, facilitates the practice of presence and conscious awareness, fosters that mind-body connection. It's used for a therapy for all of the following things: immune disorders, autoimmune disorders, anxiety, depression, chronic pain, trauma, addictions, eating disorders, digestive disorders, sleep disorders, hormone imbalance, thyroid dysfunction, migraines, TMJ, and more. So do you guys think you might be able to find some clients that you could have, even if you were working privately or trying to fill a class? Do you think you might be able to find some people? Yeah, I think so. So it pretty much covers most of the population, right? So some of the commonly used props are going to be a yoga mat, obviously. Bolsters are great. And for people who don't have bolsters, using something like a really firm pillow can work as well. Blankets, if you don't have like Mexican blankets, you can use beach towels, things like that, large beach towels. Blocks, so blocks like this. For people who don't have blocks, believe it or not, if you can find a book kind of like this size and shape, it works. Also, people can use large cans from their kitchen, like those large tomato cans, and just put like a towel over it to make it softer. And it's just about propping. It's just about having a place, you know, something to prop you. A strap, using a long one is best if you're going to be doing a restorative practice. And for people who don't have straps, you can always use a men's tie or even a belt, long belt. Okay, they work too. Chairs are helpful for some of our practice, and we'll get into some of those next week. We're not really going to focus on all the restorative poses that we can adapt to a chair because we have a separate chair training for that, but we will show you some poses that work really well with the chair. Eye pillows are nice. They just really help to relax the body by putting some pressure over the eyes. Sandbags are nice. They can weight down the joints, and we know that weight is very calming and relaxing to the body. And then a wall. Sometimes, we'll want to use the wall for legs up the wall, or, other shapes that could benefit from using a wall. Okay. So we have a variety of different breathing techniques that we use in restorative yoga. Just to refresh our memory about the breath and the definition of pranayama. Prana is actually a Sanskrit word that is used to define breath, life force, spirit, soul, breath of life. And it appears in the Yoga Sutras many times over. I gave you one Yoga Sutra, Yoga Sutra 1.34, one of my favorites in talking about the breath. It says, by exhaling and restraining the breath, also the mind is calmed. Okay, and then there's lots of different translations that I provided to you. One of them I like, you'll see the VH one, it says chitta, the field is clarified, also by holding in or out the breath. So this idea of regulating our breathing tends to help us clear the mind. And so chitta is that mind stuff. So if you think in terms of like the monkey mind and the thoughts that you kind of circle around with that are stressful, that occupy space, that keeps you from being anything other than relaxed, right? That's the chitta, mind stuff, okay? So this is just telling us that we can clear out that chitta, the mind stuff, and calm the mind by regulating our breathing, okay? And then you can, obviously look at some of the other translations. Spiritus, obviously the name of my business is Inspiritus, which means in the spirit or in the soft breath, but it's the Latin word for breath. The English word spirit derives from this word, and it comes from that same word, Inspiritus, which is the same root word for inspiration. So we receive our inspiration in the spirit and in the soft breath. Ruach is an ancient Hebrew word for wind or spirit. Ruach Elohim is a Hebrew name of God that means spirit of God. Okay, it also means the breath of God. It appears in both the Old and New Testaments. And if you think in terms of Ruach, it's that creation breath, that life-giving breath that was given to Adam upon the creation of man. So God breathed into Adam's nostrils and said, receive the breath of life, and then he became a living being, right? So it's literally that breath that is our sustaining life force. But that creation breath that we receive, just like Adam did. And so in addition to that, we have the word pneuma. It's a Greek word that means breath, spirit, or soul. Okay, we're seeing similarities in these words, right? This appears in the New Testament. It's synonymous with the word ruach, but it was used in reference of the baptism of the Holy Spirit when Jesus breathed on his disciples. And he said, receive the Holy Spirit. So that is the first time in Scripture we see that reference. In the Old Testament, the Holy Spirit would come and rest on people and then leave, okay? And it would accomplish whatever, whether it was motivating them to do something in accordance with God's will, or maybe it was to receive inspiration from the Lord, or maybe it was a word that they needed to receive, or maybe it had to do with prophecy, things like that. This was the first time we saw the usage of this word in this way when Jesus breathed on his disciples and said, receive the Holy Spirit for all time. Right? So it's not just a resting on and leaving, it's indwelling. So there's a couple Bible verses that reference that. So pranayama then is the practice of breath control. Okay, so prana means breath, spirit, soul, or life force, like I mentioned. Ayama means to draw out or to extend. And it's believed, and now has been really proven, that deep rhythmic breathing, that controlled regulation of the breath, that conscious breathing can help to extend our life. Okay, we need that vital oxygen for all the systems of our body to perform at their best. But also it helps us to calm the mind. It helps to relieve muscular tension in the body. It helps to facilitate that spiritual connection. So we see all these amazing benefits from practicing pranayama, from having a regular practice of breath control. Okay, so I have some interpretations here you can look at. They're kind of fun and interesting. And then I do want to really quickly talk about the mechanics of breathing, just because we want to make sure that whatever poses we choose are really going to help facilitate that slow, deep, rhythmic breath that takes us out of that fight or flight state and puts us into our rest and digest nervous system, that relaxation response from the body. So if you look at the picture that I gave you on page 9, you'll see the thoracic cavity, which is represented by the rib cage. It holds the heart and the lungs, okay? You'll see a black line going across. That's the diaphragm. And then the abdominal cavity contains all the other essential organs of digestion, elimination, detoxification, etc. Okay, so the diaphragm separates those two cavities. Okay, when there's first of all, there's an inverse relationship between volume and pressure. Volume being space, okay, pressure being pressing down, okay? So what happens when we breathe in is the diaphragm pushes down. We create volume in the rib cage and the lungs, enabling us to inhale. The organs of our abdominal cavity get pushed down and out. So that's why we tend to see expansion in the belly when we breathe deeply, okay? When we exhale, the diaphragm relaxes upward again. Okay, so now the volume's in the abdominal cavity, pressure into the thoracic cavity, and the breath then exits the body. Okay, so it creates a vacuum effect. When we have that pushing down of the diaphragm, it causes that inhalation due to a vacuum effect. The same thing happens in the opposite direction when the diaphragm relaxes. Okay, so when we are helping them to experience these different relaxation breathing techniques, we want to make sure that we are helping to facilitate that expansion into the rib cage, right? That expansion for them to be able to breathe in a way that is deep and rhythmic. In the lowest parts of our lungs, we have little nerve ganglia. They're like little fingers that exist at the bottom of our lungs. When we breathe deeply and rhythmically, they get stimulated. The air actually runs across them, stimulates them to switch from that fight or flight response in the body over to that relaxation response. It switches us into the parasympathetic nervous system. So we want to continue, while we're teaching restorative yoga, to be teaching relaxation breathing throughout, so that we can enable them to maintain that relaxation response in the body. We want them to stay there, right? We don't want them to disrupt that and come out of that relaxation response because their breathing might become shallow, irregular, fast, which would then stimulate that fight or flight response. All right, does that make sense to everybody? Yeah? Okay, I'm gonna take a sip of drink here.
So when somebody who's involved in an active practice would be benefiting from this precisely because they would be able to keep that calmness throughout. I mean, so it's not just helping us to learn how to relax. It's
when we're doing an active practice and we're doing active breathing, we actually are, we aren't necessarily going into a fight or flight response, but we are going into accessory breathing, okay? Because the body's gonna rise to that challenge. You'll notice when we're doing vinyasa or difficult poses, your heart rate will rise, right? You're gonna get a little bit of a rush of cortisol, a little bit of a rush of adrenaline in the body. So but you're controlling it, you're regulating it. So you're not just running away with it and then now you're, you know what I'm saying? Instead, we are using our controlled Ujjayi breath or other, forms of active breathing to regulate it, okay? And so when we regulate the breathing, now we can prevent the body from going into that fight or flight response, and we can harness the full power of the breath, making sure that we're getting all the oxygen that our body needs. Because when we start to breathe irregularly and in a shallow way, we're not getting all the oxygen that the body needs. So the muscles are going to begin to tense and tighten. The joints are going to tense and tighten because we're in that fight or flight, right? So the body's not going to open up and stretch while you're engaging it, right? It's going to contract. Does that make sense to everybody? Shirley, do you have anything to add about that? No? Okay. So, so it's going to enable us to continue to open and be strong throughout our practice without losing control of our breathing, and then, ending up where we can't breathe, where, we're disconnected from our breath, and the body then tenses and tightens and everything kind of closes back up again. Okay. All right. So, so that kind of describes the two different types of breathing I was just about to go into. Accessory breathing, okay, is the upper portions of the lungs. It's fast, irregular, it's shallow. It is associated with that fight or flight response. It results in muscular tension, less oxygen delivered to the muscles and the cells, increased heart rate, increased blood pressure, and increased blood sugar as a result too. Okay, so that's why we also see people who are under long periods of stress for long, extended periods of time end up with things like diabetes. So, all right, diaphragmatic breathing occurs in the lower lobes of our lungs. It's slow, deep, and rhythmic. It stimulates that parasympathetic nervous system, like I mentioned, brings all the systems of the body back into homeostasis where they can perform at their best. And then it will promote muscle relaxation, increased delivery of oxygen to the muscles, lowered heart rate, lowered blood pressure, and lowered blood sugar. Okay? So have you guys ever done anaerobic activity? Have you ever been like in an aerobics class where your heart rate went off the chart? Okay, what ends up happening is your muscles start to kick out lactic acid and you start to feel really bad, right? Nauseated, dizzy, right? You get flushed, you can't catch your breath, and you end up with a lot more muscle soreness as a result. And then the muscles will actually not move. They'll stop working. Okay, so people, like Shirley's a runner, and I think you know what I'm talking about, Shirley. Like if you were to run at a pace way faster than maybe what your regular pace would be, eventually you'll hit a wall, right? And you won't be able to go any further. So that's kind of, what can happen when we end up with that accessory breathing and we end up with anaerobic, lack of oxygen to the muscles, okay? There's a lot more on that. If you study, exercise physiology, you can learn a little bit more about that. Did you have anything to add on that, Colleen? No? Okay. All right. So, we know the benefits of pranayama. I went through most of them already. You can look those over, but I do want to talk about some of the relaxation breathing techniques that we use in a restorative practice. So obviously our natural breath is just what occurs without any intervention. It's without us regulating it anyway. If we were not so stressed out, if we weren't a bunch of stressed out junkies, we would breathe in a way where our whole body gets involved in the breathing process, okay? If you've ever watched a baby breathe, you will see that their whole body is moving while they breathe. Their belly is expanding and inflating. Their body is like kind of almost like a wave-like fashion is moving, right? That's how we are designed to breathe, okay? But over time, As we get older, stress accumulates. Plus, we're told to tuck our bellies in, right? We got to tuck that belly in. We don't want that belly expanding out while we breathe. And, maybe we just start to kind of shut down our natural kind of flowing motion when we breathe. But we also go from breathing in about a gallon of air in every inhale, shrinking it down to about a pint of air. That's what happens, okay? So our job is to help people learn how to breathe again, okay? So helping their natural breath come to a place where they're having that nice rhythmic flow in their breath and their whole body is moving, the belly is expanding and such, okay? But when they start with you, when they're new to the practice, before they've practiced pranayama for any time, they won't be there yet, right? So you will see the belly not moving, and you'll see a lot of lifting and lowering just from the upper, part of the rib cage. Basically, you'll see the collarbones lift and lower, and that's really about it, okay? So we're going to be teaching them just starting with awareness breathing. Starting to be aware of their breathing helps them to start to soften the breath, to slow and deepen the breath, to release that muscular tension they're holding while they breathe that constricts their breathing. And so the more they become aware of their breath, the more their breath will start to become more full and more rhythmic. Okay, but obviously it's also teaching them some of the other breathing techniques that we have in our toolkit. So diaphragmatic breathing, okay, also known as focused breathing, uses the conscious engagement of our diaphragm. Also, the intercostals are involved. The intercostals are those little muscles in between each of our ribs. So if you kind of run your hand along your rib cage, you'll notice little soft places in between each rib. Those are intercostal muscles. They expand and contract kind of like an accordion when we breathe. So they assist with breathing as well. And so this gives us some techniques for breathing. I'm not going to go through them with you because we're going to practice them while I teach you the poses, okay? I think I'm the type of learner that learns much better when I'm practicing something as opposed to just hearing it. So we'll learn them that way, okay? We'll revisit them. And if you guys have done 200-hour training with us, you already know these. You've been taught them, but we'll definitely revisit them, okay? That 3-part breath is where we're breathing into the 3 chambers. So the upper portions of the lungs, the chest, the rib cage, and then the belly. So chest, rib cage, belly. And you're consciously breathing into each of those areas. You can do it by compartmentalizing the breath in each area. So a little bit into the belly, a little into the rib cage, and then filling all the way up into the chest, and then exhaling from each compartment. Or it can be smooth and continuous, where you're breathing belly, rib cage, chest, exhaling belly, rib cage, chest. Okay. You also can do it all at once, where you're, inhaling the entirety of the belly, rib cage, chest, and then exhaling as a whole as well. Okay. So, but it's involving all 3 of those areas. Okay. That's what makes it 3-part breath. Retained breath is any breathing technique where we are retaining, holding either the inhale or the exhale or both. Okay, so we do have different breathing techniques where, we maybe inhale to a certain count, hold for a certain count, exhale for a certain count, and then hold. We also have ones where we inhale, hold, exhale, flow right back into the inhale, hold, exhale. We also have boxed breathing where we're matching the inhale, hold, exhale, hold. Okay, so like a box. We also have something called the reset breath, which isn't in here, but I'll teach it to you, where you're retaining the exhale, but not the inhale. Okay, so that one's really, really nice to encourage a big, deep inhale, because when we retain the exhale, the next inhale that we have is going to be really big and full. Okay, Blending heaven and earth is another really nice one that you can use in restorative yoga. And so you just kind of think of yourself as being connected to the earth and then connected to the heavens. You can do it seated or laying down. And it's like you're breathing earth energy in, breathing heaven energy in, and then letting it kind of mix together. You also can visualize like breathing in and out from the earth, breathing in and out from the heavens, and then blending the two. So there's lots of different ways to do that, but I've given you one example of how to blend heaven and earth. And then alternate nostril breathing involves intentionally stopping the breath in one side of the nose and inhaling, you know, through the opposite side. So you're inhaling into one side, exhaling out the other, inhaling through that side, and then exhaling out the other, where you're chambering the breath in your individual nasal passages and trying to regulate it that way. Okay, so that's another one that we tend to use in restorative practices. Like I said, we'll visit those while we're doing our training, and that way you'll get a little bit of a refresher and some experience with that. All right, before we dive into the yoga postures, does anyone have any questions about anything that I've covered so far? No? Okay. So I'm going to push you guys back so that you can see my yoga mat. And we are going to start practicing these restorative poses. So we're going to start on page 13 in your book. Hopefully you guys can see me. Let me fix the light a little bit here. Sorry. I need to have one kind of shining this way. This might be better. Recording. Do we know yet? Let's see. Oh gosh. Oops. Here, let me sorry. You guys is not coming in, is it? All right. Okay. Are you gonna be able to do that? Here, can we slide it? No idea. I'm sorry. All right, wait.
The cat and Christmas vacation.
Right? Well, you know what? Let me move the other one then. I think here, I have a better idea. Okay. Cat and Christmas vacation. Maybe this one will go. Let's see. Let's try it. Let's see. I'm just thinking if I have some front-facing light, it might be. Is that going to bother you?
Doesn't bother me.
Okay, that might be a little bit better. Let's make sure we're recording. Yep, okay, looks like it. All right. You guys see me okay? All right. I feel like I'm under spotlights here. Yay! I am under spotlights. Okay, so if you have a question, unmute yourself, speak up, and make sure you speak loudly because you guys are a little far away from me now. It might be hard for me to hear. And but the Zoom will catch you and it'll make your image bigger so I can see you. All right, so we're going to start with basic relaxation. Turn to page 25 in your Judith Lassiter book. Like, yes, we get to start with the yummy pose. All right. So in the basic relaxation pose, you'll want to have 2 blankets, or you could have a blanket and a bolster. Can you guys hear me okay? Somebody wave to me. Let me know. I can't tell. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, okay. Some optional things you could have, you know, an eye pillow. You could have a long rolled blanket, they said, a pillow, a regular pillow, extra blanket for warmth if you think you're going to be chilly, a clock or a timer. I personally don't like to have clocks or timers. I think we spend too much time worried about time already, so forget the clock or the timer. Yeah. Okay, so in terms of setting it up, I like to have the bolster under the knees because it takes the heat off of the low back. When you take your blanket You might want to kind of flatten it out like this and then curl one edge, okay? Because that can enable a little bolster for the neck. So we have that natural curve in the neck, okay? And then your head will sit, the back of your head will sit just above that, okay? Hopefully you guys can see me okay. Move these out of the way. All right. So legs are draped over the bolster. You're gonna lay down. Take your little curled up edge, let it fill into the neck to support the neck. And then bring your hands out to the sides. Turn the palms upward, allowing your shoulder heads to begin to roll back and down, making sure the shoulders aren't creeping up by the ears. Good. Close your eyes. Begin to settle into this shape, allowing your body to just soften and relax. Start to notice your breathing. How fast or slow is your breath? How deep or shallow? Notice if there's a rhythm to your breath or if it's irregular. Kind of notice where the breath is located. Is it in the upper portions of the lungs? Is it in the rib cage? Is it all the way to where your belly is expanding and inflating? And if you want to bring awareness to your breathing, you can take one hand and rest it on your chest, and you can rest the other on your belly. And so we're just doing awareness breathing of our natural breath here. As you breathe, see if you notice either hand lifting or lowering. At this point, we're not trying to change anything. We're just noticing the breath as it moves through the body. Beautiful. We know that we can't change what we're not aware of. And so becoming aware of our breath enables us to be empowered to make changes so that we can harness the full power of the breath. Good. Now see if you can begin to breathe all the way into the fullness of your rib cage. Imagine that you have a balloon in your belly that you're trying to fill. That goes all the way up into the rib cage and into the chest. As you exhale, soften the belly. Allow all of that breath to leave the body. Inhaling, filling in. See if you can go even deeper this time, filling all the way up, like you're filling up a balloon in every direction, to the front, to the sides, to the back. As you exhale, gradually soften the belly, letting all of the breath go. Notice as you concentrate on the breath and it becomes your focus, all your cares and worries just kind of fade into the background. And exhaling, releasing, letting go. Then just rest your hands alongside your hips and continue to breathe like that. See if every breath you take can assist you in letting go of held tension and stress in your body. Beautiful. Go ahead and gently just kind of bring your knees toward your chest. You can even just bend the knees and roll on to one side. Pause there for a moment. And then press your way up and rejoin me. All right. So clearly if we were doing a practice and we weren't workshopping, we would just flow one pose to the next, right? But we're spending a little time talking about each of our poses. There's another variation of this pose on page 97. So I just want you to take a look at that. And really it's pretty much the same, except she's got a rolled bolster behind the knees. So in the first one we see a rolled up blanket, and this one we see like a rolled bolster that kind of looks, let's see, it's gonna jump on me, like this. So here's another really cool prop that you can have in your toolkit. Okay, these are really nice. They're not very expensive. You can get them on Amazon because you can get everything on Amazon. Okay. So did you guys notice how that just facilitated some relaxation and rest in the body? All right. So now we're going to look at basic relaxation with our legs elevated. So turn to page 51. So this one is really nice. So she's got kind of a couple blankets stacked. We have bolsters here. So just depending on what you have available, right? I did this with my class last week, right, Jan? And you know what? It's funny. I had some really positive comments. Like people had never done this particular pose before. And you think like, oh, it's just the same as relaxation, but it does feel different. It has its definite benefits and differences. Okay, so if you have a bolster, you're going to take it lengthwise. If you don't have a bolster, then maybe you stack a couple blankets, okay? Folded blankets to give it some height. And then obviously she's got an eye pillow, and she also has a sandbag over the ankles, which is really nice. It just kind of helps to seat those ankles down. So one of the beautiful things about elevating the legs for people who have low back pain, which is a huge percentage of the population, this tends to take the heat off of, you know, the low back, just having those legs elevated. It's also really nice because this is a variation of an inversion. So yeah, so for people who have swelling, edema in the lower extremities of the body, this, and you know, it will just help to facilitate improved circulation throughout the body, you know, bringing the blood back toward the heart center, back toward the face. But we do want to be mindful of this pose because for people who have glaucoma, untreated high blood pressure, or obviously pregnant ladies, we're not going to be doing reclined poses like this, okay? So they would be doing more side-lying types of shapes, okay? So give it a try. I'm also going to show you another variation. So you can do it with the legs extended like this, or here's another option. Take 2 blocks, just another variation, and rest your bolster over it so it's even a little bit higher, okay? So you would just rest the backs of the legs. You can try whichever one. You can try both, whatever you want to do. Same thing, laying down and then creating a nice little support for the back of the neck. So notice how nice that feels on the low back, right? We tend to have an arch in the low back. Sometimes when we're laying down, this tends to just release that sway in the low back. But again, we have that flow of the blood away from the extremities toward the heart, toward the face. So it's going to really be productive for people who you know, have those kinds of challenges. Also, if you fly, we have a couple of people who work for the airlines, including Jan. And so after we fly, I don't know about you guys, but I swell up quite a bit. And this will help to just relieve that edema that we get from flying. So settle into the shape. And now I'm going to have you guys practice some retained breathing, but we're going to do the reset breath and focus on the exhale. So just do a normal inhale for the time being. And then I want you to exhale fully and completely. Really squeeze all the breath out. Let it go. Then you're going to hold the exhale. So pause for as long as you can. When you feel the need to breathe well up inside of you, take a nice, big, deep inhale. Ride that inhale right into your exhale, so it's going to flow right into the exhale. Let all the breath go. Squeeze it out. Pause at the bottom of the breath, holding as long as you can. Nice. Then go ahead and ride right back up into the inhale. Exhale, let all the breath go. Pause at the bottom of the breath. And then just continue that for a couple of rounds. As you breathe like this, notice how the inhale expands. Just by virtue of squeezing out all of the breath, we can only be filled as much as we are empty. So squeezing all the breath out of the lungs creates more space for air. But then also just something about that retained exhale results in a bigger, fuller inhale. Nice job. Go ahead and bring those knees toward your chest again. Roll onto your side. And then gently press your way up. Okay. Oh, that's okay. No worries. All right. You guys still with me out there? Everyone's falling asleep. I don't even see them anymore. They're like in bed. All right. So, do you guys notice the difference in the way that felt? Feel free to unmute yourselves. What do you guys think about having just those legs elevated either flat or even up higher on a little, I call it a little tower?
That way with it up on blocks, so it's very high. That was really nice. And then our back was flat.
So you liked it a little bit better?
Yeah.
Marty S. just said that she liked this way, up a little bit higher, better than just having it flat and long ways, because it took the pressure off of the low back. So
more room for your legs.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, one of the things about having it the way it's pictured on page 51, having it like this, is for people who have bigger legs, they're going to have a hard time, right? Unless you give them maybe 2 bolsters, right? They're going to have a hard time fitting both of their legs on here without feeling like they're going to roll off. Okay, so that's why I wanted to show you that other variation, so that you have another option available. But one of the things that, I like to do is just, tell people, like, here's 2 different options, pick which one you like. You know what I mean? And people will, they'll find what works for them.
And I just, there's a difference in exactly how your back descends onto the floor. So if they have, if their back is a little bit more swayed, they might find one way or the other better. And Samantha, I know, has quite a, she has more sway in her low back, tight quadriceps, which pull on all sorts of things. But Sam, did you try them both? Which one did you find better?
Yeah, that was exactly what I was going to ask, because I find it's very hard for my low back to get flush with my mat unless I rise up really high, and because I'm very tall and my legs are very long, it's very hard just with blocks and a bolster alone to get that much elevation, because I still have a curve. Like, I can still put my hand underneath my back. So the first way, I'm using 2 big thick blocks with a blanket, and then I folded the blanket again over top, and then I did long, width wise, with 2 heavy pillows. So it's really high for me. But I went this way, instead of this way, I found that was a little bit easier. And I could
What
get
I-
a little
what
bit
I found-
closer.
Yeah, what I found too was if you have like a bolster or a mat or a blanket just under your knees, then it releases the hamstrings, which for me gets my back down onto the ground. But when I went lengthwise, like on page 51, I did kind of like that. But I don't have as much sway in the back, and my legs are considerably shorter than Sam's. So you definitely want to give your participants some options, because body dimensions are going to have some bearing on how that feels. And that basic relaxation pose is really the foundation of a restorative practice. That's your, like your corpse pose, your shavasana, that's the pose we're kind of hoping to get to, right? Or that completely relaxation. But yeah, so you might have to try a few different things and encourage them to find the place of comfort that's absolutely appropriate for them.
Yes, definitely. So another option is you can come up even higher, right? The other thing you can do is use a chair, which we'll get to when we get up to legs up the wall. As a variation, we call it instant Maui, but this, doesn't everybody want to go to Maui in their minds? Or for real? So, just bringing these legs up even higher. And I, like Sam, also have a sway back lordosis. So the higher the legs, the better for me as well. But again, it's going to be dependent on their anatomy, okay? And what feels good to them. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is yogi recliner. It's not pictured, so you might want to jot down a couple notes. Not real tricky or anything like that, but you got to set it up first. So I did do this on the video that I gave you guys a link to, so that class that I recorded. What you're going to do is you're going to take 2 blocks. These are a little thin. I like some of the thicker blocks. These guys have thicker blocks, but so, just depending, you work with what you've got, but the thicker blocks tend to work just a little bit better. You're going to take 1 block and you're going to bring it on its side edge like this, and that's going to go near the end of your mat. Then you're going to take the second one and it's going to be on the next level down. So it will have a bit of a slant to it. You can also do one on its end and then the second one on its side. You just want the first one to be higher in profile than the second one that runs long ways. Okay, does that make sense? Okay. So then you're going to take your bolster and lay it down on those blocks. So now you have a little incline for your body. And then I always like to add this, probably because I have that sway in my back, like Sam does. Take a blanket as a transition, and you're going to roll up the edge of it so that you have a little bit of a slope coming down. Okay? You can even do 2. Okay, just depending on how high your bolster is. Okay? To give you even bigger of a transition. Okay, if you have a bolster, a blanket, or something available for behind the knees, that's really nice too. I just happen to have this bolster, but you could take a regular size bolster, or you could just roll up a blanket, and that's just really nice to support the knees. But that's not necessary; it's just optional. And then go ahead and make your way into your yogi recliner. Another thing that you can add is you could have blankets coming out off the sides for the arms. It just depends on how many props you have available as you're, clearly when you have a class of 5 or 6 students and each of them has 4 blankets, you're going to have a lot of blankets, right? So just keep in mind what you have available to you. And then go ahead and lay down onto that. And again, allow the hands to come out to the sides or alongside the hips, turning the palms upward, allowing the shoulders to begin to relax open. Let your feet splay open. They're going to be at least hip-width distance apart. And then begin to settle into your breathing. as you breathe this time, I want you to try boxed breathing. And so in boxed breathing, you're going to inhale for a count of 3 or 4. Hold at the top for a count of 3 or 4. Exhale out for a count of 3 or 4. Pause at the bottom for a count of 3 or 4. Inhale, count of 3 or 4. Pause at the top, count of 3 or 4. Exhale out, the same count. Pause at the bottom for the same count. Just do a couple more rounds like that on your own. You're just matching the inhale, the retention at the top, the exhale, and the retention at the bottom. So however that works for you. It doesn't have to be 3 or 4. It could be longer. It could be less. Good. Take your hands alongside your hips and press your way up. Just in the interest of time, I want to keep things moving along so we get through everything. And now we're going to transition into a side lying relaxation pose. Judith has a picture of it on page 181, but I'll show you a couple other variations. There's always variations, right? So this is wonderful for, you know, people who are pregnant, but also I'm going to show you, do I have it here? Hold on, let me see if I have banana asana. Okay, we'll get to that. I'm not going to show you the other variation. We'll show you that later. Okay, so in this, yes.
Sorry, could you just tell me, because that one's not in the book, what that last one was called?
Yogi recliner.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so for side lying, she's got a couple stacked blankets to catch the head. It could be a bolster. It could be, you know, again, whatever you have available. And then if you have some propping that you can place kind of behind the back, so maybe you and that's going to come kind of along just to support the back. And then you'll have something in front of you to just rest the arm, okay? So it could be a blanket or 2. Could be a bolster, could be whatever you have available. The other thing is that she's got a blanket between the legs, okay? So I'm going to use this bolster for my arm, and I'm just going to use my blanket for between my legs. And then you're just going to lay yourself down on your side. So pick a side. The legs will kind of stack, or they could stagger, you know, whatever you feel. But just having something between the legs and then laying down. Ideally, the size of your pillow, your bolster, whatever's supporting your head is about the height of your ear to your shoulder, right? So that our spine is in one straight line. If we have our head like up here, it's going to kink the neck, right? And if we have it too low, then the head is going to drop below the height of the spine. So ideally, you're in one straight line. By the way, that's advice for when you sleep as well. And then I like to cuddle. So I'm going to be like holding and hugging a blanket bolster in front of me just because this is the way I sleep at night. This is my sleep position. So notice how nice this feels. So this is a variation for people who are pregnant or can't lay on their back for some reason. I actually have a client who has severe kyphosis, rounding in the upper back. She was a cancer patient, and she had all kinds of complications that led to this rounding in her spine, and she cannot comfortably lay on her back. So this is an option for her or people like her as well. So notice now that it gives you the option, the availability to really breathe into the side of your lungs. So focus your breathing into whichever side is facing upward toward the ceiling. Expanding into your rib cage and feel that stretching of the intercostal muscles in between each of your ribs. Good, and as you exhale, just releasing all of that breath, which with each breath, expanding a little bit more fully into that rib cage. Obviously, you would do both sides. We're not going to do that today just for the interest of time, but you would have them laying on each side. So halfway through, you would switch sides. Good. Begin to take one hand in front of you, and you're just going to press yourself up. I am going to show you Banana Asana. That's on page 14 at the top, so we'll check that one off. Since we're already here, we might as well go right into it. So just a little modification. What you're going to do is you're going to move the props out of the way, but you're going to move the bolster so that it's right underneath your rib cage. So you're going to lay the side of your body, the side of your rib cage right on that bolster. Now you need to have something to catch the head. So you can take a block, and then you can take a blanket on top of that. Okay? So this is a lateral bend for the body, a supported lateral bend. Okay? So make sure that the bolster is catching the side of the rib cage. Your shoulder is going to come above it so that the arm will rest in the space between your block and blanket and your bolster. Okay? And then you'll rest your head down. Mine is not quite high enough, so I'm going to use two of these blocks because I've got those little blocks that aren't quite so high. Okay? So that I'm in one straight line. Okay? So once again, now we're extending into that rib cage, but we have a nice lateral bend of the spine. So our spine isn't going to be straight in one line now. We're actually going to have some curve in the spine due to that bolster underneath the rib cage. Now, if you want to, you can reach your top arm up and over. See if you can just relax it. If you have an extra block or something available to catch the hand, you can rest the hand on it. Okay, and now we're stretching into the armpit. So it's a lateral bend, just as if you were doing tall mountain and you were hinging to one side in a standing shape. It's the same effect on the body, that lateral bend into and opening up that side body. And then breathe. You really need to focus your breath into the rib cage that's facing upward toward the ceiling. Good. Go ahead and just take the hand to the bolster, and you're going to press yourself up. Okay? So what do you guys think of side lying and Banana Asana?
If you're not,
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Denise.
if you're not, because this felt uncomfortable to me, like,
Having the arm up and over?
yeah.
Did you have a place to catch
If
it?
you put a block,
Yeah, if you put a block, there's something to
difference.
catch it above you. The other thing you can do is you can rest it. You can rest it on your hip too, or when you come up and over, it can be more in front of you if it's too much to, have it come all the way up and over.
Could you use two stacked blankets? This is kind of high.
Yeah,
for me.
absolutely. Yeah. So Marty S. just asked if instead of having a bolster underneath the side of the rib cage, if you could instead have some stacked blankets. Yes. Remember, like, you know, just like Shirley was saying, you're going to, number one, adapt to whatever props you have available. But number two, to whatever feels best in, you know, your body. So, all right, any questions on either of those two poses before we move on to some of the backward bending?
I liked the, just a comment, I really liked how you compared it to mountain pose and the lateral bending. I thought that was cool.
Yeah. So
I think, I was just going to say too, I think that sometimes these poses are very revealing as to where we are holding tension, because I too did not find that extremely comfortable and had to kind of, even the side lying one, I had to really adjust, and I had to actually with my arm, just a cushion there wasn't enough. There was this great big space in between my arm and the cushion, so I ended up, I tucked a block in there, and then I was comfortable. But the side lying one, or the banana asana, I kind of like that, that was different, and I could really feel some tightness in my intercostal in the back side of my body. So, you know, so discomfort isn't maybe exactly what we want, but it is revealing for us to recognize, okay, this is where I'm holding tension. So this is probably a good pose for me. How can I prop it to find appropriate comfort so that my body can then release and receive?
Absolutely, yeah. And those are the operative words, like she said. How can I prop it so that I can comfortably, you know, receive this pose and receive the benefits from it? Right?
I was going to say that one of the terminologies that I've used with some of my clients is that we hold a place of stillness or restriction, and the only way that you can actually go past that is to actually not force it, but let the body lay in that restriction for just slowly comes out. So I think that's a great picture for people. They don't get that they're just holding that stillness. They're stuck in that place.
Yeah.
And then you give the body permission to let go, to relax, and to build.
Yeah. So Colleen was saying, I don't know if you guys heard that, you know, when she works with her clients, when they're feeling that tension or that tightness, just reassuring them that, you know, moving into that space of stillness and letting go, kind of surrendering to the pose, eventually their body will let go and soften and relax into it. I always say that it's not until about the third or the fifth breath before the body finally goes, okay, you know, and I'm consciously trying to do it. Now imagine clients that you have or students that you have who have no body awareness, right? So if it's happening in 3 to 5 breaths for me, it might take them a minute, you know what I mean, before they finally start to let go and release into the pose. But one of the things to be aware of, if after a minute, let's say, they're getting more and more uncomfortable, now it's counterproductive. Do you understand? So if they're not able to soften and steady themselves in that pose to receive the benefits, and it's getting more and more uncomfortable, then they need to adjust, or they need more propping, or they, you know, need to find a variation. Okay. Bob gets a lot of tightness in his erectors. And so when I do, like, we're going to move into these back bends, when I do them in my Monday night class, about halfway through, he just starts fidgeting and moving, and, you know, and I keep telling him, like, give yourself permission to change your shape, to come out of that, or to, you know, not do it. And now he's starting to actually listen and give himself permission to do that. But we have to constantly remind our clients of that. Like, if you're uncomfortable, you can't relax, right? Some of it's just the busy mind, and they have a hard time relaxing. And that's a whole separate challenge, and that's why they're there. But if it's something physical and they're getting more and more tight, or, you know, they're starting to feel pain or something like that, then it's counterproductive. Okay. All right, we're going to move into back bends, and turn to page 31 for a simple supported back bend. This might be the pose I see. Good. Okay. So with this one, a nice rounded bolster. It's really, for this particular shape, I will say that the comfort level is going to really depend on A, their anatomy, and B, the shape of the props and how they fit their body, right? So that will work well for me because I have a lot of lordosis, but something like this is not going to work for me. Okay? It's gonna be painful. So again, it's going to totally depend on your body. So this style bolster is not like, see how wide this is, you guys, and how thick? Mostly the width, I think, is going to be the challenge. I need something that is narrower. So I'm going to choose this bolster for me, okay? But go with what works for your anatomy. So this is going to come under like the middle portion of the back. You want your shoulders above the bolster, and then you'll have a blanket to catch the head. Again, I like to curl up the edge of it so that it creates a nice bolster for the neck. And then go ahead and come on to your props. A lot of times I'll find my clients have the bolster either too high to where their shoulders are actually on it, or too low where it's in their low back. You want to find somewhere in between, okay? And so start with the knees bent here. Yeah, and even this is a lot for me. I'm going to need a little more support for my head. So adjust as you need to. Much better. All right. And again, the arms will come out to the sides with the palms facing up. You want your feet about hip-width distance apart, with the feet grounding down, stacking those knees over the ankles so that you feel grounded. If you don't feel grounded, it's hard for the body to relax. It's going to go into that fight or flight state because it's not going to feel stable, grounded, centered. So make sure as much as your body is contacting the earth as possible, and you feel fully grounded and supported. Good. Now in this particular pose, you'll notice it's much easier to breathe into your rib cage, but harder to breathe down into the belly, right? So we have to really encourage that deeper breath all the way into the belly in this shape. So see if you can find diaphragmatic breathing, using that diaphragm, pushing down so that you create that vacuum effect so that you can breathe all the way into the lower parts of your lungs and your belly expands and inflates. As you exhale, soften the belly, release the breath. A couple more like that. Good. Just collapse the knees to one side and then press your way up. And we're going to move into Mountain Brook. I also heard it named Flowing River when I went through my training. So Colleen and I always go back and forth on that one. Is it Mountain Brook? Is it Flowing River? I don't know. It's both. Okay, so turn to page 36. And so this is very similar to what we just did, but now we've added a bolster behind the knees, right? So you can choose how high you elevate the back. You could have a bolster, you could have a blanket, you could have two blankets. For me tonight, I'm going to choose just one blanket, fold it up, okay? It's a little bit flatter, so it's not as high in profile. You'll still want to support the head, so have a blanket under the head. Again, if you want to curl up the edge of that. to fill into the neck. Okay, and then you'll have support for the backs of the knees. Okay. Make sure that your shoulders are above that middle blanket. Good. And then just begin to settle in. So notice how in this particular shape, we still have that heart opening. It's not quite as intense, I guess is the word, but maybe that's just because of what I felt. So it's not as big. How about that? But you can always make it as deep or as deep as you want it to be, depending on the height of that blanket underneath your back. So then you'll notice that that bolster behind the knees helps to create some softening into the low back. For those of us with lordosis, we could always choose a higher profile bolster behind the knees. You could even create that tower like we did earlier to elevate the knees even higher. Just breathe here. Find a nice, slow, deep, rhythmic breath, an easy breath. This time, inhaling for a count of 3 or 4. Pause at the top. Exhale out for double the count of your inhale. So take it really slow on the exhale. Inhale for a count of 3 or 4. Pause at the top. And then exhale out to double the count of your inhale. Good. A couple more like that on your own. Good. Go ahead and bend into those knees. Roll on to one side. And then gently press yourself up. All right. So a lot of times when I teach that pose, Mountain Brook or Flowing River, I'll give them the option to not have the bolster behind the knees, but to bend the knees and place the feet on the floor. Mostly because of what Sam was talking about. Like, she's got pretty severe lordosis in the low back, and this might not be enough. So we've got all this opening into the chest, and now we've got this big sway in our low back, and it's very difficult to relax for people who have that going on, right? So having the knees bent and placing the feet on the floor will soften that low back toward the floor. What did you think, Sam? Which one did you like better?
I prefer the second one with the support under the knees. I really like it. It's like supported fish.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Similar, yeah.
I need a little extra behind my neck because I work like this. So I really like this pose because it really helps do the counter pose to what I do all day looking down. And I like pulling my shoulders back. I find it a huge heart opener for me. I tend to crouch like this at work. So I really like it with the support under the knees, though. I think it makes a big difference for my low back.
I see Leanne kissing somebody back there.
Yeah. It's my sister Rachel and her boyfriend, and also my daughter.
I thought that was Leanne, and I just saw blonde hair. Like, who are you?
They showed up a little early.
No worries. Just join us for some restorative yoga.
Tell Rachel to behave herself back there. Her mother. Hello. Okay. You can go ahead and mute. One thing I was going to say too, Dawn, on the first one we did, I like to put a block under my head.
Yeah.
And that just seems to keep my neck in line with my spine. So I find that, like, I like to have my chest elevated, but then to drop back like that, even with the support under my neck, was a bit much. So a block here, and then just that softening of the chin to keep the neck long is something that I really enjoy. So
yeah, so Shirley's basically saying, instead of this, that.
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing you could do is you could do a blanket and a block. Like if you have a low profile block, it just makes it a little softer, right?
Mm-hmm.
By the way, a blanket and a block together is called a blocket.
A block. A block.
Well, you know, I mean, you gotta.
And that particular,
things up, I don't know, who knows.
That particular posture is one of my students' absolute favorite places to begin their practice.
Yeah.
Because it's a chest opening posture, right? And it really is, like Sam was talking about, such a big counterpose to what we've been doing during our day. So as a first pose, when in even many of my more active classes, my power classes even, I start them there so that they have an opportunity to open up and to breathe and to just kind of settle into that. And they absolutely love it. It's their go-to pose.
It's a wonderful pose. So I also really love the supported bridge pose. This one's a little different. This has a lot of extension going on. So she's got 2 bolsters end to end. Not everybody is going to have those kinds of props available to them. So I'm going to show you what I did today with my class. And actually last night, I guess I did it too. So having the bolster running lengthwise, this one's a kind of a high bolster. Most of them are a little lower. They're a little more like the one that is pictured here. She's got her head kind of rolling off the edge. For some people, like Shirley said, it's a little bit much to have all that opening in the heart and then the head too. So they might want to have a block underneath the head. So what I have them do, do you guys mind giving me a higher block? I'm going to just demonstrate and then I'll get back to you. Can I have your block? Thanks. Okay, so I got some higher blocks. So having the head, you know, resting on a block, but then also having a block below to catch their seat, okay? Normally these would be about the same height, okay? There's a little height differential. I don't know why these bolsters are so thick, but they are. I really kind of thought they would like change over time, but they haven't. So, and then you have, you know, blankets to catch the legs if you want. So you can be all laid out. Whoops. Okay. So the seat, you know, will be on that block. I don't know if you guys can see. And then I'm going to lay down. And then I could have my head hanging off the edge if I wanted, or, you know, having a bolster to catch it, a block to catch it, excuse me. And then extending those legs out long, turning the palms upward. Okay. They also could do it with the knees bent. This is how I think I started them yesterday. We had our knees bent like this, you know, and then the other thing you can do is I had them do one leg at a time. So we started and we, you know, we feel this nice stretch into the psoas muscle on the left and the, you know, into the front side of the thigh, and then have them switch halfway through. And then maybe they do both. So you could do, you know, a minute, and then maybe 2 minutes, you know, whatever. But allowing those hands to come out to the sides with the palms facing up, relaxing into the head. So you can try it where you slide up the bolster a little bit and then remove that block. See what it feels like to have the head kind of hang over the edge. You also could do it the way that they pictured, where she's got the edge of the bolster, like right behind the heart. So notice the difference here, right? So see how I've got this heart opening taking place? Hopefully you guys can see me on there. And then you could, you know, add a block, excuse me, underneath the head. So see how I've got complete support all the way down now. right? But again, you got to have a lot of props and tools available for this. So it's dependent on what you have available, you know, in terms of props and tools and things, right? So give it a try. Try those different shapes. See what you like. Maybe try it with one leg extended. Try it with both extended. Try it with the knees bent. Try it with the head rolling off the back. Try it with the heart rolling off the back. And then what you can do when you teach it is, you know, give them those options so that they can find, you know, what works for their body. That make sense? All right, so once you guys have had a chance to kind of try things out, let me know what you like, what worked for your body. We've got my cat running around here now. She's, yeah, she stole my highlighter. She's still over there. So. And I hear the dogs like pounding upstairs. They must be, they must have made their way into the house.
The bolster's definitely too
The
long
bolster?
for my body.
The bolster's too long?
Too blankets on each other.
Okay.
Maybe. I think maybe it's an extra large bolster.
Yeah, it's a really big bolster. So, you know, but those, you know, even stacking blankets can be really nice. You know, having, you could have 2 blankets stacking on top of each other, or even just one. See what you like.
I really liked that last night.
You liked it last night? Yeah.
I really liked it.
Yeah. It's a really nice, it's just a really nice supported back bend. And what I like about it is that it elevates the hips too, at the same time. And so you're getting the benefits of a bridge pose, for example, without having to put any effort in, you know, and the whole body is supported, not just the hips.
I think you could even do a sandbag when you like this.
Oh, yeah.
Put your hands, because it'd be a great psoas opener.
Yeah, I used it for psoas release too, but we didn't have enough sandbags. So Colleen was saying you could put a sandbag across the hip bones, you know, across the lower abdomen. That would feel really nice. It would actually help to also seat that low back down. So for those of us who have that curvature in the spine, having the sandbag on the front actually helps to soften that low back down into, you know, the bolster toward the floor. All right, any questions from my Zoomers? Hey, I like that, my Zoomers.
I want to know why Samantha has a blanket on and I'm ready to take everything off. It's so hot.
There might be a difference in age. I don't know. I'm just saying.
I think it has to do with temperature where she is and I
She's
am.
also in Canada, so.
Yes, I know. That's.
Temperature is a little different than where we are.
Right. Actually, it's about 30 degrees Celsius right here, so like 90 degrees Fahrenheit. But Samantha has a blanket on because at my friend Leanne's house, she keeps the temperature at about 16 degrees Celsius, which is darn near freezing. Like the end of my nose is usually cold when I'm at Leanne's. So it has nothing to do with the outside temperature, all to do with Leanne's house. Is that true, Sam? Yes.
That's awesome. Yes. All right.
And you can just tell Rachel that, you know, this is being recorded, so she should behave herself back there.
We can turn off her video if you prefer. No, I'm just teasing. Okay, so we have 5 minutes left. Should we do one more pose? What do you guys, what say you? Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so guess what? We just did supported one leg bridge when I demonstrated the one leg extended. Okay. Did everybody experiment with that? Let's see what it feels like. Okay. So let's go ahead and
Can you do?
What's that?
Oh, I was going to say, can you do supported sphinx? It's one of my favorites.
Okay. Shirley wants to end with supported sphinx. Supported sphinx. I can say that.
I love this one.
All right, so so one of the things, we don't have that, look at, here's my cat. This is my blind cat. She likes the light. All right, she's not entirely blind. She can see light and dark and like make out like shadows and things, we think, but we're not sure. Okay. So one of the things about Sphinx that you'll want to do is have a bolster. This one is not pictured in your book, by the way, so you might want to take some notes down. And I like to have that blanket underneath my hips. Not everybody likes that, but it feels good for me. I think I have really pronounced hip bones. They stick way out. So when I'm in this pose, I just feel like it's just too much. It's too intense on my hip bones. So place a blanket if you want to. And then you're gonna lay down where you have the bolster right underneath your rib cage. Okay, so ladies, if you are well endowed, put them up and over the bolster, okay? You're not gonna be laying on the girls, okay? So, I don't know who's gonna watch this video, but God help us. All right, so coming down onto the bolster, making sure you're comfortable, if you know what I mean. And then your elbows are gonna come right underneath your shoulders. So hopefully you guys can see me. My hands are shoulder width distance apart, okay? And I'm just supporting myself on my bolster and on my arms. I'm not putting any effort in at all. So unlike when we have a Hatha practice or a Yang style practice where we're pushing down, hugging those elbows in, lifting the chest and engaging the legs, you're gonna relax everything. Okay, so let the heels kind of splay out, relax your tush. Okay, just let the bones support your body and then relax your head. A lot of times people will have a kink in the back of the neck, so just let your neck be long. Your gaze will be on the mat, maybe between the hands or even a little closer toward you in the middle of your mat. Good. So in this shape, we're going to spend a little bit more time breathing into the back sides of our lungs. Here's what's interesting. In our lungs, we have little alveoli. Those are like the little pockets that are responsible for the uptake of the oxygen into the bloodstream. We have more of them in the back sides of our lungs than we do in the front. But we spend more time laying on our back, so we have a harder time like really breathing into that space. When we're in shapes like this, especially when it's pressing into our belly, it kind of forces us to breathe more into the back sides of our lungs. So really try to expand through the backside of your lungs and your rib cage as you breathe. That compression into the belly is good as well. It's excellent for your digestive organs and for elimination. So if this is difficult for people, like they just really have a hard time with this shape, another option could be that they come into restorative crocodile. So they would just stack the hands and then rest their forehead on their hands. If that's a little too far away, then they can take a block, rest the hands on the block, and then rest their forehead on the block. So this is just a variation for people who, might not resonate with the supported Sphinx. Good. Take your hands onto the bolster and then press yourself up. Walk those knees towards you. So if you were teaching in a restorative practice, a nice complement would be a restorative child's pose after that, or a restorative half dog. Okay, we'll get to those tomorrow. I mean, next week, not tomorrow. Next time we meet. But you know, always counter those back bends with some sort of a forward fold. Okay, you know, any kind of forward fold will be fine, but that's just a natural place to go because you're already right there. All right, any questions about anything that we covered tonight before we wrap up for the evening?
Well, I had a comment about, you have the blanket sort of soft or flat, but I found that if I had it under my hips like that, then it had less of an arch in the back. I was more tucked under in my tail a little bit.
Okay.
So that was very nice and light.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So Marty S. said that she liked to have the blanket folded under her hips, having it just be a little bit higher. That she found that to be nice. It took like some of the heat out of that low back, like the pinchiness in the low back. So that's something you could, you know, experiment with. Hopefully you guys are taking notes with the different ideas, suggestions, variations, you know, just to try things out, see what you like, try things out with your students. Okay. So any other thoughts, questions, comments before we close for the evening?
I think it sounds really important to listen to your students.
Yeah.
And they might even give you ideas, and they may have one that might be hurting themselves. And you might want to, you know, make sure that they're.
So one of the things that I do in as the teacher of a restorative class is I walk the room. I might demonstrate really quickly, show them how to use the props, and then I'm walking around the room, making sure everybody is comfortable, everybody is safe, helping people, like bringing props over, suggesting modifications, if people look uncomfortable, that sort of thing. So this is the time when you guys will be off your mat, observing your class and really assisting them. And if you like to do hands-on, there are plenty of opportunities, you know, to get your hands on people, to just help them release tension in the shoulders, in the neck, in the face, you know. There's lots of opportunity because they're going to be there for a while. Okay? Anything from you Zoomers out there? No? All right. So I will be posting this probably tomorrow with the link, if not the next day. So just give me a day or two and I will have the link available. You know, that's at your disposal all the time. So you can come back to this information again and again and again. And, you know, if you experiment with these poses in the next week, the ones that we've you know, gone over, and you find something that works really well for you, please share it with the group next week, because we love ideas. We love, you know, new ways of doing things, different ways to use the props, different variations, things like that. So feel free to bring that back to us and share that with us, okay? For those of you, really quick, make sure you read through the entire document because the training requirements are on the last page, on page 16. So for those of you who are going after a certificate and you want to get the full 10 hours of CEU credit, if you just attend these videos, you only get 4. But if you do all of the homework, you'll get a certificate, and then you get 10 hours of CEUs, and you get 10 hours of MAST credit if you are working toward your master certificate. Okay, so make sure you read through that, and then we'll go over those requirements next week. So we're all on the same page of what those requirements are, and make sure that you know, you guys are able to ask any questions you might have about that. Okay? All right. See you guys in about a week. Enjoy experimenting with these poses. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.